Hocus Pocus by Kurt Vonnegut. Chapter 1. My name is Eugene Debs Hartka, and I was born in 1940. I was named at the behest of my maternal grandfather, Benjamin Wills, who was a socialist and an atheist, and nothing but a groundskeeper at Butler University in Indianapolis, Indiana, in honor of Eugene Debs of Terre Haute, Indiana. Debs was a socialite and pacifist and a labor organizer who ran several times for the presidency of the United States of America and got more votes than as any other candidate nominated by a third party in the history of this country. Debs died in 1926 when I was a negative 14 years of age. The year is 2001 now. If all had gone the way a lot of people thought it would, Jesus Christ would have been among us again, and the American flag would have been planted on Venus and Mars. No such luck. At least the world will end, an event anticipated with great joy by many. It will end very soon, but not in the year 2000, which has come and gone. From that, I conclude that God Almighty is not heavily into numerology. Grandfather Benjamin Wills died in 1948 when I was a plus 8 years of age, but not before he made sure that I knew by heart the most famous words uttered by Debs, which are, quote, "While there is a lower class, I am in it. While there is a criminal element, I am of it. While there is a soul in prison, I am not free," unquote. Debs' namesake, however, became anything but a bleeding heart. From the time I was 21 until I was 35, I was a professional soldier, a commissioned officer in the United States Army. During those 14 years, I would have killed Jesus Christ himself or herself or itself or whatever if ordered to do so by a superior officer. At the abrupt and humiliating and dishonorable end of the Vietnam War, I was a lieutenant colonel with 1,000 and 1,000s of my inferiors. During that war, which is about nothing but the ammunition business, there was a microscopic possibility, I suppose, that I called in a white phosphorus barrage or napalm airstrike on a returning Jesus Christ. I never wanted to be a professional soldier, although I turned out to be a good one, if there can be such a thing. The idea that I should go to West Point came up as unexpectedly as the finale of the Vietnam War, near the end of my senior year in high school. I was all set to go to the University of Michigan and take courses in English and history and political science and work on the student daily paper there in preparation for a career as a journalist. But all of a sudden, my father, who was a chemical engineer involved in making plastics with half-life of 50,000 years and as full of excrement as a Christmas turkey, said I should go to West Point instead. He had never been in the military himself. During World War II, he was too valuable as a civilian deep thinker about chemicals to be put in a soldier suit and turned into a suicidal, homicidal imbecile in 13 weeks. I had already been accepted by the University of Michigan when this offer to me of an appointment to the United States Military Academy came out of the blue. The offer arrived at a low point in my father's life when he needed something to boast about which would impress our simple-minded neighbors. They would think an appointment to West Point was a great prize, like being picked for a professional baseball team. So he said to me, as I used to say to infantry replacements fresh off the boat or plane in Vietnam, "This is a great opportunity." What I would really like to have been, given a perfect world, is a jazz pianist. I mean jazz. I don't mean rock and roll. I mean the never the same way twice music the American black people gave the world. I played piano in my all-white band in my all-white high school in Midland City, Ohio. We called ourselves the Soul Merchants. How good were we? We had to play white people's popular music or nobody would have hired us. But every so often we would cut loose with jazz anyway. Nobody else seemed to notice the difference, but we sure did. We fell in love with ourselves. We were in ecstasy. Father should never have made me go to West Point. Never mind what he did to the environment with his non-biodegradable plastics. Look what he did to me. What a boob he was. And my mother agreed with every decision he ever made, which makes her another blithering nincompoop. They were both killed 20 years ago in a freak accident in a gift shop on the Canadian side of Niagara Falls, which the Indians in this valley used to call Thunder Beaver, when the roof fell in. There are no dirty words in this book except for hell and God, in case someone is fearing that an innocent child might see one. The expression I will use here and there for the end of the Vietnam War, for example, will be, quote, when the excrement hit the air conditioning, unquote. Perhaps the only precept taught me by Grandfather Wills that I have honored all my adult life is that profanity and obscenity entitle people who don't want to unpleasant information to close their ears and eyes to you. The more alert soldiers who served under me in Vietnam would comment in some amazement that I never used profanity, which made me unlike anybody else they had ever met in the Army. They might ask if this was because I was religious. I would reply that religion had nothing to do with it. I am, in fact, pretty much an atheist like my mother's father, although I keep that to myself. Why argue somebody else out of the expectation of some sort of an afterlife? I don't use profanity, I would say, because your life and the lives of those around you may depend on your understanding of what I tell you. Okay? I resigned my commission in 1975 after the excrement hit the air conditioning, not failing, however, to father a son on my way home, unknowingly, during a brief stopover in the Philippines. I thought surely that the subsequent mother, a young female war correspondent for the Des Moines Register, was using foolproof birth control. Wrong again. Booby traps everywhere. The biggest booby trap fate set for me, though, was a pretty and personable young woman named Margaret Patton, who allowed me to woo and marry her soon after my graduation from West Point, and then had 2 children by me without telling me that there was a powerful strain of insanity on her mother's side of her family. So then her mother, who was living with us, went insane, and then she herself went insane. Our children, moreover, had every reason to suspect that they too might go crazy in middle age. Our children, full grown now, could never forgive us for reproducing. What a mess. I realize that my speaking of my first and only wife as something as inhuman as a booby trap risks my seeming to be yet another infernal device. But many other women have had no trouble relating to me as a person, and ardently too, and my interest in them has gone well beyond the merely mechanical. Almost invariably, I have been as enchanted by their souls, their intellects, and their stories of their lives as by their amorous propensities. But after I came home from the Vietnam War, and before either Margaret or her mother had shown me and the children and the neighbors great big symptoms of their inherited craziness, that mother-daughter team treated me like some sort of boring but necessary electrical appliance, like a vacuum cleaner. Good things have also happened to me unexpectedly. Manna from heaven, you might want to call them, but not in such quantities as to make life a bowl of cherries or anything approaching that. Right after my war, when I had no idea what to do with the rest of my life, I ran into a former commanding officer of mine who had become president of Tarkington College in Scipio, New York. I was then only 35, and my wife was still sane, and my mother-in-law was only slightly crazy. He offered me a teaching job, which I accepted. I could accept that job with a clear conscience, despite my lack of academic credentials beyond a mere BS degree from West Point, since all the students at Tarkington were learning disabled in some way, or plain stupid, or comatose, or whatever. No matter what the subject, my old CO assured me, I would have little trouble keeping ahead of them. The particular subject he wanted me to teach, what's more, was one in which I had excelled at the academy, which was physics. The greatest stroke of luck for me, the biggest chunk of manna from heaven, was that Tarkington had need of somebody to play the Lutz carillon, the great family of bells at the top of the tower of the college library where I am writing now. I asked my old CO if the bells were swung by ropes. He said they used to be, but that they had been electrified and were played by means of a keyboard now. What does the keyboard look like? I said. Like a piano, he said. I had never played bells. Very few people have that clanging opportunity, but I could play the piano. So I said, shake hands with your new carillionaire. The happiest moments in my life, without question, were when I played the Lutz carillon at the start and end of every day. I went to work at Tarkington 25 years ago and have lived in this beautiful valley ever since. This is home. I have been a teacher here. I was a warden for a little while after Tarkington College officially became Tarkington State Reformatory in June of 1999, 20 months ago. Now I myself am a prisoner here, but with pretty much the run of the place. I haven't been convicted of anything yet. I'm awaiting trial, which I guess will take place in Rochester for supposedly having masterminded the mass prison break at the New York State Maximum Security Adult Correctional Institute at Athena across the lake from here. It turns out that I also have tuberculosis, and my poor addled wife, Margaret, and her mother have been put in by court order into a lunatic asylum in Batavia, New York, something I never had the guts to do. I am so powerless and despised now that the man I am named after, Eugene Debs, if he were still alive, might at last be somewhat fond of me. End of chapter 1.